So codependency, and for those that are looking for a definition, we've got two. We've got two. But let's start here. Let's start here. It says that codependency is a dysfunctional relationship dynamic where one person assumes the role of the giver, sacrificing their own needs and well being for the sake of the other, the taker. I'm going to read that again. Codependency is a dysfunctional relationship dynamic where one person assumes the role of the giver, right? So one person in a relationship is the giver, meaning they sacrifice their own needs and well-being for the sake of the other. And the other person in the relationship is what we call the taker. So we have this dynamic between giver and taker, giver and taker, okay? The bond in question doesn't have to be romantic. It can occur just as easily between a parent and child, friend, and family members. The term codependency first appeared in substance abuse circles to describe a lopsided relationship that has been consumed and controlled by one person's addiction. It grew in popularity and became shorthand for any enabling relationship. So it did start with simply just reducing codependency to a couple that were, let's say one or two of them were alcoholics. It was strictly addiction through alcoholism or even drugs. It was limited to that when it first came out. But as time has progressed, people realize, but there are a lot of different addictions that people might have, right? Not just drugs, alcohol, but sometimes people overwork themselves, right? Other people might have other things that are considered to be dysfunctional habits and patterns that they continue. So let's just keep on going here. All right, so once again, codependent relationships Codependent relationships are a type of dysfunctional helping relationship where one person supports or enables another person's addiction, poor mental health, immaturity, irresponsibility, or underachievement. I'll read that one more time. Codependent relationships are a type of dysfunctional helping relationship where one person supports or enables another person's addiction, poor mental health, immaturity, irresponsibility, or underachievement. In other words, one person in the relationship is enabling the other person to do things that aren't healthy. So one person in the relationship is enabling the other person to do things that aren't healthy. And I'm just saying these definitions slowly so that everybody's on the same page. And I think there are two basic definitions, giver and taker, and then this one as well. So for example, a husband who gambles a lot, I have the book Codependent no more and have to read it. Yep, and I've yet to read it. Yeah, yeah. Some of those books, I'm like, some of them are really good, but I like books that can really break things down, you know? Really, I like books that can really break things down. And sometimes the books are like, I was like, I need something to decode the book I'm reading, you know? So once again, an example of codependency, a husband who gambles a lot, but the wife, instead of helping him, for example, to find a better way to deal with his addiction and so on, she might quote unquote work more to make sure the bills are paid and also to fund your gambling addiction. Codependency and enabling. Okay. So those are just some examples. All right. So at this time, I'm going to just share a quick video We'll play like maybe 2 minutes and 30 seconds of it. I really liked how she broke it down, and it includes this definition we already shared. I hope you can get some tips from it as well. All right. Here's a quick example of what somebody might say. It says here, did you hear about the man who woke up in the morning and asked his wife, how am I going to feel today? Everybody laughs heartily at these jokes. But even while we're laughing, we get the gist of seriousness, okay, of living someone else's life. The tragedy of not ever knowing how we ourselves feel and how much we miss when we let others dictate our experience. We can also get a taste of how we, in our fear, let codependency drive us to be controlling, meddling in each other's lives, and try to change people. Also, just some things that I want to talk about here, because I know this came up in a previous conversation. As we talk about codependency, just want to give a definition on addiction, right? Addiction is a chronic, lifelong condition that involves compulsive seeking and taking of a substance or performing of an activity despite the negative and harmful consequences. Addiction can significantly impact your health, relationships, and overall quality of life. It's crucial to seek help as soon as you develop signs of addiction. And so, of course, people recognize the substance addictions like the alcohol, the caffeine, um, and so on, right? But what sometimes we don't talk about is what we call non-substance addictions. Behavioral addictions can occur with any activity that's capable of stimulating your brain's reward system. Behavioral scientists, and this is from my help, one of the online sources, behavioral scientists continue to study the similarities and differences between the substance addictions and behavioral addictions and other compulsive behavior conditions like OCD. The DSM-5 currently only recognizes gambling disorder as a diagnosable behavioral addiction in the non-substance related disorders in the category of substance related and addictive disorders. But when you really look at what are some things that can fall under this category, here are some things that come to mind. Eating, right? Can that be enabled? Exercising or dieting. Shopping, even though many people don't want to talk about the shopping. Shopping's one, right? Shoplifting. Video gaming. Use of the internet, social media, and so on. And so here's something that's interesting, right? Here's something that's very interesting. I wanted to unpack codependency, codependency being the fact that you're enabling a partner in a dysfunctional pattern, right? Could be gambling, you name it. And we talked about how we have this giver and taker relationship, the giver and taker relationship. A taker in a codependent relationship, often, this is from ChatGPT, by the way. Yeah. I love how they worded it. I love how they worded it. A taker in a codependent relationship often had a childhood marked by experiences like emotional neglect, inconsistent parenting, or a strong need to please others to gain love and validation. Okay? Which can lead to them developing a sense of entitlement and difficulty recognizing their own needs in adulthood. How about the giver, though? The childhoods of people who become givers in codependent relationships are often marked by unstable environments, trauma, and a lack of boundaries. Okay? Lack of boundaries. What's interesting is that the giver and the taker have a similarity with the fact that sometimes they grow up with childhood experiences where both of their emotional needs, were not met. Many times their feelings were not seen and heard. Both people. But the difference with the giver is the giver learned that in order to stay on my mother or father or caregiver's good side, I had to make sure that I kept the peace, and sometimes you enabled bad behavior. Let me fall in line and let me make sure that whoever is the enforcer or whoever I, in a way, fear, I stay on their good side, stay quiet, and make sure subconsciously that their needs are met. And so the giver in childhood learns how to fall in line within their parent relationship. And they also learn how to fall in line in their future relationships. So, in a way, right, this is not like one size fits all. There's many different, but I'm giving you an example of how it could look, right? So the giver says, well, in order for me to get a little something, because my caregiver did not give me those love needs or some things were missing, I have to fall in line or make sure that I worked hard to receive a little something back. And so they go into other relationships, working hard, giving as much as they can just to get a little back. And in a way, they recreate, and in a way, they, who is that again? And in a way, they recreate how they came into this world. They recreate how they came into this world. Now, sometimes the taker goes to far extreme. Sometimes their needs weren't met, and they spend their future relationships making sure that they will get met, even if it means that they're the center of attention, even if it means that the other person's not seen. So I feel like the taker is like an extreme version, right? Your needs weren't met when you were younger, and so you go to the opposite of not caring about others' needs, and you make sure you take care of your own. Does that make sense? That makes sense? Okay. All right. And so with that, let me stop my screen share for now. And Joab, if you can just play the first 2 minutes and 30 seconds of that, and we will continue on after that.
Hey everybody, today I'm going to talk with you about codependency. What is it and how can we improve? So like I said, today I'm going to talk with you about codependency. I've heard from many of you that you worry that you're in codependent relationships, or your therapist has told you that you're codependent. What the heck does that even mean? Okay. So what did I do? I looked the Wikipedia definition up because Wikipedia knows all. Not really, but I liked their definition best. It says, codependent relationships are a type of dysfunctional helping relationship where one person supports or enables another person's addiction, poor mental health, immaturity, irresponsibility, or underachievement. So what that really means is that one person in the relationship is enabling the other person to do things that aren't healthy. And an example of this would be, let's say I have a husband who gambles a lot and has a horrible gambling addiction. And instead of helping him get the help he needs to stop gambling, I work harder so we have more money so he can spend it on gambling. Or I make sure that everything is still okay at the house and I take care of him, make sure his clothes are cleaned and make sure he's fed in order for him to still function at a somewhat bare bones level. So I'm enabling him to continue doing what he does. I hope that makes sense. So the nice thing to know, or maybe the not nice thing to know, is that a majority of us are in codependent relationships in some shape or form. But there are a ton of things that we can do to make it better and to help ourselves so that we don't become stuck in these unhealthy relationship patterns. So in order to better help ourselves, we need to know what the symptoms are. Right? That's kind of like when I'm talking about diagnoses, the first thing I give you are the symptoms of what we look for, because how else are we supposed to spot it? Am I right? So the symptoms of codependence are low self-esteem. Now these are the people who are enabling. I want you to understand who I'm talking about. I'm talking about the person who makes the unhealthy person able to continue being unhealthy. And the symptoms are things such as low self-esteem, no or very poor boundaries. They have a very people-pleasing personality. They really need to control situations. They have a lack of communication or clear communication where it's a healthy, direct way to communicate with another person.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much. So we just shared a little bit of that video just for you to get a little intro. But right now, we spoke about it a little bit, and I want to start off with that first question today. And somebody said I feel attacked. It wasn't supposed to. Gosh. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Y'all are real. Okay. Real funny. So as you look at your own life, first question, and we're 50 minutes in. Can you imagine? We breaking records. We never started the first question 50 minutes in, but I had to break it down a little bit. As you look at your own life, have you ever been a part of a codependent relationship? As you look at your own life, have you ever been a part of a codependent relationship? And were you the giver or the taker? Were you the giver or the taker? Once again, as you look at your own life, and feel free to use that raise hand feature, have you ever been a part of a codependent relationship? And were you the giver or the taker? Tammy, you're up.
Hey y'all, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. Yes, so I've realized that, oh, sorry, I just got like a message as I was saying. Yeah, so I realized that actually in a lot of my relationships in general, um, specifically friendships, I've definitely been more of a giver. And I I realized that because in my 20s and 30s, I was like, why? Like I was evaluating the losses of my friendships. And I realized that a lot of my friendships had to do with me being more of a giver. And in retrospect, I think attracting a lot of people who were takers. And I evaluated a lot of the losses of my friendship, and I realized a lot of them happened when I set firmer boundaries for myself and realized that I needed to, participate in more self-care in certain things. And I realized a lot of the takers kind of, found their way out of my life. And I think that was very healing. It was also very damaging. It was really painful to lose those connections, but I realized that I contributed to a lot of the codependency in terms of giving a lot and feeling very empty. And so I think, thank you, therapy and Jesus. I learned a lot about, healthy boundaries and not giving too much of myself. And so I've been a lot more intentional in terms of my relationships and the people I choose to keep in my life and the friendships I choose to maintain or build up, in terms of just being careful that I don't fall into those same patterns that I did when I was younger. So that's definitely a work in progress, but I realized that I definitely was a big giver in a lot of relationships. And, there could have also been, in retrospect, some relationships where I could have been a taker as well in response to, that place of being empty. So, I definitely feel like there's both parts at play, but I realized that in a majority of my relationships, I was definitely the giver. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. And while you were speaking, Tammy, one of the things with givers is the fact that this kind of relationship dynamic, they mirror what they grew up with, right? In terms of their caregiver. So even though it's not good for them, it's what's familiar to them. So we're still attracted almost to the some may call it toxicity. We're still attracted to the dysfunction in some cases, right? Because it's still comfortable for us, even though it's not healthy for us. And so in a way, we almost recreate the situation. We recreate the situation with our caregivers, or we recreate the situation, our early experiences, and almost want to I would say sometimes heal what has already passed. Sometimes we want to heal what has already passed, and we end up finding ourselves disappointed in the same way or in a similar way, just like we were in our first early experiences. Some people would be like, I'm so upset, the fact that this keeps on happening to me. But sometimes we are the common denominator, depending on the situation. We are the common denominator. And we have to stop ourselves in order for things to get healthier. So I appreciate you opening up about that. All right, so in this order, Jason, PJ. Jason PJ.
Happy Sabbath. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, hey bro, good to see you, man.
Good to be around. Um, yeah, it's funny. In February 2023 is when I learned this word and I broke down immediately.
Mhm.
Um, because it's so real. And words are funny because you don't know them until you know them, and then once you learn them, you know them forever. And it's like I don't want to say that I was triggered, but yeah, like it's me standing in the need. Um, Codependent relationships has been what I thought was my purpose, like as a giver. I thought that like to serve humanity, I was to give with a giving heart and things of that nature.
Mhm.
And I, you know, was exposed to takers who take indiscriminately. The theme in my friendships were me supporting people who are homeless, who are like I grew up and things like that. So like two different people, but in different situations, but still like there was this common thread of like, oh, like I don't need anything in return because what would they give me anyway, kind of thing.
Mhm.
But realizing that my giving was enabling and lacked boundaries and these things of that nature, things that I didn't really like grow up learning about. Because I think my mom was very similar in that she gives a lot too. So I just always saw her doing it, and like I assumed that that's what God wants of His people. But realized as I'm sitting in the middle of a psych hospital going through a group therapy about codependent relationships that man, this is not good for me, or the other person either. Like it's a double-edged thing where the taker's not necessarily benefiting, they're being enabled in something that does damage them as well. So if I do care about the person that I was enabling, I have to change my ways, and we both can like walk away from this in a better place. Like I didn't instantly like get mad at the takers. And so something that's helped me a lot in my healing is understanding that as a giver you have to find your limits because takers don't always have one. Like if you set up a table and just said these things are free, like that table will perpetually be empty. Like it's they're never like, oh, I couldn't take that free thing that you just said was free. Like people will just take, they'll take. And I didn't really have a limit. And I don't like to like do IOUs. Like it's like if I gave it, I gave it. Like it's a gift. There's a difference between like, oh, you owe me when you blah blah blah. But long story short, yes, I am familiar and it is in my life. And what Tammy brought up was so real that it does cause a rift when you do start to make those boundaries as a giver, because people then like I've been like recently I've been having a hard time with certain things in my mental health, and it's manifested in me creating boundaries. And I think people have brought up lately that I'm being selfish. And I was like, whoa, that's a new one. So like I think it's working. So I think that like in the healing process, it does come with some friendship breakups I've learned. And people haven't necessarily articulated that the best way, but now I'm coming to understand what happens when you do create the boundaries and how having a people pleasing personality can be like dangerous for me, like the enabler. So appreciate this topic. It's very I'm holding through. I'm trying but but yeah, it's definitely something that I think that I'm not alone with. I'm coming to understand. I used to feel very alone with it, especially being from the Bronx, because a lot of people were like, why would you give that? Why would you give? Why would you? And so for me, especially when it comes to finances, like I was big on like, I make way more money than I need to. Like, I'm gonna look out for people who didn't go to college, or I'm gonna look out for people who had, like you said, I think she said something about the takers have a history of like poor parenting or something like that.
Yeah, poor
Like
parenting. Yeah.
very, very real in the takers that I was, so I'd be like, why didn't you tell your mom? Why didn't you ask your mom? What do you mean you're homeless? I was like, oh, my mom kicked me out since I was 14. Like it's stuff like that like pull on my heartstrings because I don't want to watch people become villains before my eyes because I've done that too. Like sit back and watch someone's bad day turn into a bad year and turn them into a person who does things indiscriminate of morals. So yeah, I'll be trying to intercede as God's, like you never know what you might do in someone's life with a little $200 or not little, but you know what I mean? Like sometimes that's all it takes. But unfortunately for me, I got Zode played. So I definitely resonate with this topic and I'm going to sit back and listen because I tend to talk a lot.
Thank you so much, Jason, for that. And you had me thinking about the fact that, and I got this from when you were speaking, that a lot of times for the giver in the relationship, the giver in the relationship is so used to holding on to someone else. They're so used to holding on to someone else, and they have to learn how to hold on to themselves. They have to learn how to hold on to themselves. And there are a lot of givers that have not started to actually live. They haven't started living yet because most of their existence has been taking on the identity, the beliefs, and the feelings of everybody else. They're camouflage, right? They get with their parents, they've learned, let me camouflage. This is what the family thinks. No matter what, let me camouflage and believe what my family thinks. And then they leave that experience, and even if they distance themselves, not realizing that the mentality is still within themselves as the giver and the codependent, they go to the friendship and they take on somebody else's identity, right? And so the big thing for the giver is to set boundaries, to be okay, also with the reality that some people may not be your friend anymore. Some relationships may come to an end because you started caring for yourself. And also the last thing is it's time for you to live. It's time for you to live. Last thing, I was realizing that a lot of us sometimes may be carrying beliefs from 3 or 4 generations before us. And the present generation has not asked themselves, how do I want to live my life? How do I want to live my life? PJ, go ahead.
Happy Sabbath, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, cool. So, yeah, what you were just saying there, huh? Call me a chameleon because I can camouflage real good. But I don't know. I feel like listening tonight, God has a funny sense of humor for me personally. I wasn't gonna come on because I I was upset because of a situation tonight with someone, and Colleen actually like hit up our group chat and was like BTM tonight. So I'm like, ugh, should I do it? Okay, I'll do it. And then hearing you talk about codependency, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is literally the reason why I was pissed off today, because I'm being codependent and I'm the giver and I'm getting my behind beat. And it's like, why am I putting myself through this? Like, I shouldn't be pissed off on my Sabbath. I should be entering into this day of rest after an overwhelming week. So I shouldn't be giving in to the pressures of a taker taking my joy. And like, as I'm thinking about it, like I do feel attacked because I think I've been a giver my whole life, and it does stem from trauma and what's been like thoroughly placed into my my psyche. So it's hard. And then saying that I gotta live for myself, I gotta hold myself, it's just like, dang, how do I do that though? So it's difficult, and I really want to learn because I'm getting older and I'm over here stressing myself out, getting gray hairs before my time. I need to live and I'm not living. So I gotta figure that out.
And it's so crazy, PJ, because when I was reading, that was one of the most difficult things for the giver to do. Most difficult thing for the giver to do is to actually find out what their feelings are and advocating for themselves. It scares them so much because they've been doing it so long for everybody else, and they're not used to doing it for themselves. And being in that space, they think it's the most scariest thing ever, but it's the very thing that they need not only to survive, but to thrive. So I was thinking about this, and I was talking to, so Danielle and I, we were eating at this place. By the way, I love the food. Really good food. Really, really good. When I tell you that food, that burger I had and those fries, oh my God. Almost lost it. Almost lost it. But anyway, we were no, not Olive Garden. Come on, guys. I don't go to Olive Garden all the time. Okay. I go to Olive Garden maybe once, twice, every couple months. Okay. I go different places, but Olive Garden, it's on my heart. But anyway, so we were talking about just like codependency and everything, and I was telling her what I was reading, and I was just so amazed by it, right? But I was telling her that I think a lot of older generations get upset because of when you tell them about what happened and what they did, right? So for example, let's say you were to tell you're a giver and you were to tell your caregivers or your parents that this is your experience and how you felt that you didn't get certain love needs met and everything. And I was telling Danielle that a lot of older generations get up so upset because they feel like maybe you're not appreciating what they did do for you and so on. And I realized that every generation has defense mechanisms. And these defense mechanisms, right, which end up, having us emotionally neglected in any generation, really. But these defense mechanisms, it feels like an attack for them because you're attacking the one thing that helped them to survive. You attack the one thing that helped them to survive. And I just get so I was like so confused. I'm like, we're just expressing our truth. What's the big deal, right? But I realized you're attacking the one thing that was keeping them, that helped them to survive. And so the main push is, I know this helped you to survive, but it affected me. And I think we should start when we express ourselves to anybody, whether friendship, caregivers, whoever it is, you let them know, I appreciate the effort that you made. You did the best with what you had at that time. And all of us have our defense mechanisms that helped us to survive. But now I'm in a place where I want to thrive, right? So I think all of us can come to a place where we write a letter to our defense mechanisms in a way. We write a letter to our defense mechanisms saying, I honor you for helping me this far. But at the same time, it's time for me to thrive and grow past my defense mechanisms. So I think that's a thing that we all can do. Look at our defense mechanisms and say, I honor you for helping me this far, but now I want to thrive. I want to get better. Right? Even a giver within and of itself is a defense mechanism. You didn't receive validation or emotional care. And so you go into relationship, do as much as you can to give, subconsciously wanting to receive, hoping to receive that care, and then you end up disappointed. It's a defense mechanism in order for us to get our needs met. So I'm gonna stop right there and we'll continue on with some stuff, but I just wanted to share that. Okay. Oh, Ruthie, go ahead.
I have a question.
Yes.
I know how to put it. So, in a perfect world, then, in order not to become an enabler or a codependent person, the giver, the taker, whichever one, our parents would be feeding us with they would be feeding us with the, how can I say this now? What we need in terms of encouragement and, Affirmation.
Yes. So the love
Okay.
needs encouragement, affirmation,
Okay.
physical touch, like affection, right? Those kind of love needs. It's not perfection,
Okay.
but a lot of people, they end up being givers
Mhm.
because it was either inconsistent or sometimes never existed.
Yes. So then I said those of us that didn't get that, how do you actually just, develop it on your own? I mean,
Mhm.
God is so amazing because, you know, recently, um, the messages that I've been getting, whether from BTM or other situations in life that I'm going through, it's always about learning to be your own affirmer or,
Yeah.
but then how do you do that? How do you become the person how can you exist without needing to hear from someone else that you're good enough?
I don't think we're advising that it's not important to hear
Mhm,
that from somebody else.
mhm,
I think we're advising that you need to believe it first.
mm,
You need to believe it first. And so all the words that you would want somebody to say to you,
mhm,
do you even say it to yourself?
mm. Okay.
Right? I was gonna start listing all the things that you could possibly say to somebody, but Aunt Ruthie, you are your unique self. PJ is her unique self. I'm my unique self. And so you have to answer that question in terms of what will bring your heart peace and that validation. What would you want somebody to say to you? And start saying it to yourself and start there. Write it down on a list, and that's personally between you and God. But if every day you can say, God, this is the things that I had always hoped to hear from somebody else, but I didn't realize I can start saying it to myself.
That's good.
You're killing me. I thought it was an excellent question. Excellent question. Her reactions kill me. This is so funny. It's so funny. Any other thoughts? Any other thoughts? So let me give you an example. Let me give you a quick story about myself, and then we'll go on to this question. What is the root of codependency? Oh, I saw somebody go off of mute. Was that anybody? Let me see. Okay, Natalie, go ahead. Natalie, are you speaking? Oh, this is a new laptop. Maybe it's acting up. All right, does anybody hear Natalie? I can't hear Natalie. Does anybody hear Natalie? Oh my gosh, did she
I
leave?
couldn't hear her.
Oh my gosh.
I think she's rebooting her system.
Oh, okay. All right. She has a new. I was gonna say insecurity. What about insecurity? What about insecurity? All right. Well, I was giving her some time. Oh, okay. PJ, go ahead.
As somebody with a lot of insecurities, how do you go about like coming out of that? Like constantly telling yourself negative things. Like what does one do? Because I've been told to make like lists of like all the positive aspects about me versus like the negative things I say. But it's like looking at that visually on paper, it doesn't do anything for me, and then I'll still have the thoughts anyway. So how does somebody stop having like, or what are better ways to not have the thoughts?
That's a really good question. That's a really good question. And I'm gonna throw it to VTM right now. So PJ's question right now is dealing with insecurities, and how do you personally combat those insecurities? All right, go ahead, Ruthie.
You know, I've been listening to a lot of, oh yeah, therapy. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts lately, and just as you said that, PJ, I remember hearing these two young women on one of the Hardly Initiated podcasts, and they were saying, one of them in particular was saying, now they weren't talking about, what we're talking about, but what they say to each other, what they say to themselves. They write them on post-it notes, or they have this list of things that they say. These are like high achievers. They want to make a lot of money, et cetera, whatever. And so they'd have maybe about 4 or 5 things, or maybe 10, I'm not sure, that they say to themselves every morning. Or one woman went as far as to say she says it to herself 3 or 4 times for the day. So I'm wondering if we immerse ourselves in, what Devonte was saying, thoughts of good thoughts, or good things that we would like to hear from other people, if we said them to ourselves several times for the day. I'm wondering if that could help.
Jason.
Yeah, I want to mercy. I want to talk about what Tammy said in the chat. Therapy, specifically cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. It's kind of what talk therapy is, but I'm fresh out of fresh out of learning about it, so I want to bring it up because it's funny you mentioned that, because I was talking about that with someone recently. But thinking about your thinking, which sounds like you're overthinking, but is really the root to a lot of like behaviors that we have. So in CBT, there's a triangle where it's your thoughts, your feelings, and then your behaviors. And so like each one affects the other two, kind of thing. So that's why sometimes people use positive affirmations to affect their thoughts by saying I am worthy. Eventually I'll think I am worthy and then feel worthy, and so on and so forth. But not all the time that works, right? So I think that finding a therapist, if that's possible, or even like for me personally, because I lost my job last year, AI has been like clutch. I use an AI called Pi, but yeah, like sometimes you just got these questions and you need someone to run it back with that's guilt-free, and that's why I like therapy. But when I didn't have therapy, I turned to the bots, and they have better suggestions than the 988 hotline, but I'm not gonna get into like that politics, because that's a whole different thing. I'm not gonna take it there. But in
Don't take it
terms
there.
of
Don't take it
insecurities in
there.
specific, um, CBT therapy, but also for me personally, I'd say what helped is immersion therapy. So like I was insecure about my chest a lot growing up. So then I just started like deep dive, like just like when you go to a pool and the water's cold and you put your toe in, and but they say it's best to just jump in and then like figure it out from there. I did that. I started like being topless around my house when I got to college and I had roommates. Like I was like everybody would be topless and I just be like, in a t-shirt, you feel me? But but I was like, yo, like I want to get over this. And there's certain ways where you can like just like do the most embarrassing thing you think is possible until it feels less embarrassing. So that's another way to get through insecurities. But it's really, I would definitely like second what Tammy said about therapy. It could really be a useful tool, but it's not as accessible, or it can be tricky getting access to it. So I'd say like definitely finding ways to immerse yourself in the thing, whether it's through affirmations, whether it's through, you know, doing the thing that you think other people think is bad about you, or I don't know how to explain. Like I'm insecure about talking a lot. I do it anyway though. You feel me? Like sometimes my insecurity creeps in and I cut myself short. But like it's getting done regardless, because I've had other people who say, "Oh, I love when you speak," or just like the song said, like the words they're affecting other. You know what I'm saying? You can't always listen to the voice in your head, which sounds crazy to say, but yeah, sometimes it whispers, some mean things, and not all of it's true. That's why it helps to have a therapist. But like I said, I get it. Therapy is expensive and hard to come by. And some of these therapists don't be knowing how you specifically get down. It takes time to get there. So that's a tough question, though. It's a great question, but that's my input on that, because I feel you on that. How do I get rid of these insecurities and be a better person, a better me? So I wish you the best with that, because that's not a quick fix. It takes some work, but I believe in you, and I definitely believe in our God. So they'll figure everything out.
Love that, Jason. Love that. Thank you so much for that.
Post
Kay,
CBT. I co-signed the CBT. Yes.
Hey y'all, good night. Bear with me. I have a couple of thoughts.
is that Kim K?
It is me.
You throwing me off with the K. You're real funny. You real Kim K. I see what you're doing there. You thought I wouldn't recognize, right?
Yeah, whatever. I gotta get some voice alteration, man. I'm gonna be Ruth next time with some, I don't know, John. Anywho, yeah, so I have a couple of thoughts.
Go ahead.
Now, one of it hopefully will reach somebody. So the guy before me was talking about therapy being expensive and things of that sort, and the whole 980 or 998, whatever that number is. The first thought I have is a suggestion. There is a company called BetterHelp that what's the word, offers counseling and things of that sort for affordable rates. Now, affordable is obviously subjective, but it is not your $190 per hour to talk with somebody. It's a lot cheaper than that. And to offer my own personal experience, I think it was like $20. So that's a suggestion I have. It's called BetterHelp. Then the four other things, going back to the original question, was first, identifying that there's no one answer that's just gonna like change everything. It's not only listen to motivational things. It's not only write things on your wall that are positive. There's no one answer. And in also that same breath, unfortunately, but it is the reality as well, it is something that we have to continue to work towards and push against. And I say that because the nature of just life and how sin is in the world, the devil is not trying to like make things easier for us, right? Everything is intended to break us down and separate us from God. So acknowledging that and realizing that, I think is also important. This other acknowledgement that I wanted to mention is, and it's not to trample on anybody and their feelings, because I say this even to myself, it's realizing that the things that I struggle with, I think it's human nature, unfortunately, to say like, I'm struggling with this thing and the whole world is fine. Everybody's struggling with something, unfortunately. And it's not to say your issue is not important. It's to say, maybe don't be so hard on yourself, because nobody's perfect. I think that's a pretty important thing to remember at all times. But trying to get back into actionable things as well, I wanted to suggest that in this very like space of being vulnerable, I think it would also be healthy to practice that vulnerability, sorry, with the people that are around us. So in this book that I've been reading, it talks about setting boundaries, sorry, and things of that sort. And the idea is setting boundaries lead to healthy relationships. And if that person cares about you and loves you, they will honor that boundary that you have put in place. So picture the scenario. You go to the people that you love and that love you, and you be vulnerable with them. You say, hey, I've been struggling with X. And hear what they have to say about that thing. And if writing it down is not like your tactical learning style, maybe record it, right? Record what they say to you. They might even give you some positive things in that moment, and record it so that when you are feeling that feeling again, you can play it back. You hear it from somebody that you love and that loves you. And, you know, I think I said vice versa already. So I think that might be helpful and healthy, being vulnerable with the people that are around you and that love you and support you, and record what they say back to you so that you have it for reference in the future. And the last thing I want to say might be the hardest thing, if anything, is it something that can be worked towards? So, for instance, I'll probably give 2 examples. Growing up, I was like, I thought my feet were growing way too big, right? I was like, there's no way I'm a size 9 and I'm 12 years old, right? I literally went to a church health fair, went to a doctor, and was just like, I think something's wrong with my feet. Is there anything that I can do about it? She's just like, no. And in that moment, I was just like, oh, I'm gonna be a freak of nature and da da da. Nevertheless, I grew up and realized the size 9 was normal. But like my point is that was not something that, you know, technically can be worked on. But there are some things that I did feel insecure about that I did identify could be worked on. And I said, you know what? While yes, we can't be perfect beings, strive for that, right? So what are some of those things that I struggle with that I can work towards, and then work towards those things? I think that might also be healthy. I'm not saying it will be easy, but just separating those insecurities into their own categories could also be helpful and lessen that burden mentally and emotionally on yourself. So those are a lot of thoughts I said. Sorry, but yeah.
No, excellent job. Excellent job. Thank you so much, Kim K. Really appreciate, and everybody else that, you know, gave those gems. Great thoughts, everybody. And so for those that just jumped on maybe 5 minutes ago, I'm just going to read this definition one more time. I'm going to share some more information as we talk about the root of dependency and get ready to close out as well. But we've been speaking about codependency, and for those that they want a SparkNotes version of codependency relationships are a type of dysfunctional helping relationship where one person supports or enables another person's addiction, poor mental health, immaturity, irresponsibility, or underachievement. In other words, one person in the relationship is enabling the other person to do things that aren't healthy. We also spoke about the giver and taker relationship. There's a giver and there's a taker. And the giver and the taker, they have similar backgrounds in terms of their upbringing. That emotional care was a lot of times neglected. It was either inconsistent or or it didn't even exist at all, right? So it was either inconsistent or non-existent. So with that, what is the root of codependency? We'll talk about that now. All right, so what is the root of codependency as we continue on? 5 most common causes of codependency. And this one I got from Psychology Today. Love that site as well. So 5 most common causes of codependency. Childhood neglect. If a parent or caretaker fails to provide their child with support and guidance during the critical formative years, it can lead children to believe that their needs aren't important. Later in life, adults who were once neglected might continue to ignore the things they might need and avoid asking for help from others, causing a codependent friendship or relationship. How about number 2? Codependency can be a result of overprotective parenting. Neglect isn't always what causes codependency. The opposite type of parenting can be just as detrimental. Helicopter parenting. When parents are overly controlling or shield their children from any challenges or struggles, which can prevent a child from developing important skills and coping mechanisms they need later in life to function in healthy relationships. And so maybe the parents did everything for them. They get into a future relationship, and now their partner, the giver, has been the substitute to the parents, or have become the substitute to the parents in that case. All right. And so adults who grew up with extremely overprotective parents may struggle to live independently. And givers, that's where you come in, because you make their life a lot easier. So easy that it becomes dysfunctional or even starts dysfunctional. Overparenting has been linked to emotional dysregulation and a lack of autonomy, both of which are codependent personality traits. Let's keep going. Emotional and physical abuse can be one of the roots in terms of codependency, right? Many people who struggle with codependency as adults report experiencing emotional or physical abuse during childhood. Child abuse is severely damaging to our development and often leads to unhealthy behaviors. Victims of abuse may suffer from abandonment trauma and have a strong desire to be needed by others. So a lot of the givers, for example, they may know very well that they're always giving and the other person's taking. But the thing is, they would rather have this dysfunctional relationship, because at least they have their relationship, than to be alone and have that fear of experiencing the abandonment again. The next one, permissive parenting. Permissive parenting. And this one is more about the takers, I would say. Permissive parents often shower their children with love and affection. In doing so, they might fail to set rules and guidelines. Let me say that one more time. My gosh. Permissive parents often shower their children with love and affection. But in doing so, they might fail to set rules and guidelines, aka the boundaries. Growing up in this kind of environment can prevent children from learning self-discipline. Many people who grow up with permissive parents have a hard time respecting and acknowledging other people's boundaries, which is often a factor in codependent relationships. Have you noticed that when you do try to set your boundaries with the person that's the taker, they might get very angry? So angry that it reminds you of a kid throwing a tantrum? It may be because that quote unquote or that specific taker never learned delayed gratification. And it might be a case where they have always experienced maybe love and affection, but there weren't any rules or boundaries put in place from young, so they don't know what a relationship is with boundaries. They just know that they've always received. So it makes them easy in that case to be the taker. All right, let's keep going. How childhood issues manifest codependency in adulthood. Neediness. When a person's needs aren't met during childhood, they may crave attention and reassurance as adults. These experiences can also lead to a fear of abandonment, making it difficult to spend time away from a partner. Needy people may feel anxious or upset when their partner spends time with others. These are classic codependent behaviors that can have a negative impact on life and interactions and interpersonal relationships. I think Danielle was speaking to me earlier this week, and she was like, I think she told me, Don, let me see if she's still on. I'm not sure if she's still on, because she worded it such a great way. Don, do you remember what you worded in terms of like our caregivers and being like babies and being codependent? I don't know if you remember. If you remember the word for word, feel free to share. But if not, I can just paraphrase. All right. So, oh, no, that's me. But she was saying that codependency played a role, obviously, when we were babies, right? Because we needed to depend on our parents, right? And many times babies can only cry. That's their way of expressing, what they need. The crying might be in multiple things. I need to be changed. I want to be fed, quote unquote, everything, right? Exactly, co-regulation, yeah. But at a certain point, when does a baby, learn how to speak, then go through the regular stages of development and actually learn how to communicate as they get older, their own needs? And many times we miss that stage. Sometimes our parents haven't even experienced that stage or learn how to be vulnerable and ask for certain needs. And many times we haven't learned it ourselves. Now we're learning it and are getting better at it. But that has been a pattern: emotional unavailability and not being able to express. All right, let's keep going. Low self-esteem. There's a strong link between childhood maltreatment and negative sense of self. Victims of emotional abuse and neglect may see themselves as flawed and unworthy of love and respect. A lack of self-esteem can contribute to codependent relationship dynamics. People pleasing. My gosh, people pleasing. Everyone wants to be liked, but some people feel the need to please others all the time. When children have emotionally unavailable parents, it can lead them to believe that love is something that they need to earn. And we talk about this all the time, talking about, should you be loved just for who you are? Or should you be loved based off of what you do? Now, everybody might say, oh, we should be loved based off who we are. But our words might say it, but our actions say otherwise. If your actions show that you work to be loved and so on, then you know all about this people pleasing. It is your everything to life. It's how you operate, it's how you breathe. Many times you don't know anything different unless you try something different. Last couple ones, poor boundaries. We'll go through this quickly. When some people grow up in an unhealthy environment, they may never learn what boundaries look like. Not only can this make it difficult for them to set boundaries later in life, but it also can cause many people to ignore the boundaries that others try to set as well. In either instance, respecting and reinforcing healthy boundaries is essential to building healthy relationships. Difficulty distrusting others. When children are lied to and let down by caregivers, they learn that they can't trust or rely on others. This lack of trust can make it difficult to connect with others. Codependent people often have trust issues in their relationship. Constant feelings of guilt or shame, abuse, neglect, and other forms of childhood trauma can lead to some people struggling with guilt and shame. Someone might feel as though they don't deserve happiness, or they may feel responsible for people or things that are out of their control. All right. And these are just some examples of how codependency can show up in your family. Okay. And if you can relate to this, feel free, take a mental note of this, because I'm going to share some things that like practical examples of how codependency can show up in your family. So you might identify it and be like, wait a second, I went through that. Okay. So first one, the family is constantly worried about the feelings and the needs of one person. The family is constantly worried about the feelings and needs of one person. Ever grew up in a family and that one person is dominating so much that with their own feelings, everybody else has to conform to them. Everybody else has to be walking on eggshells. If you went through that, you most likely were in a codependent relationship in your family. How about this one? You sometimes feel resentful that nobody seems to notice your feelings or take care of your needs. Does anybody feel that way? Does anybody feel that way? That you might
Not
have grown,
emergency.
that you might have grown up in a codependent relationship. I got more for you. I got more for you. Okay? You find yourself anxious or worried if one of your family members appears upset and trying to figure out what to do to fix it. Have you been there? Have you been there? I know I did that with my mom. Okay? Let's keep going. You spend so much time taking care of the needs of the rest of the family that you do not know if you recognize your own feelings or thoughts. We talked about that. Number 5, you feel guilty for expressing needs or thoughts because you worry about what others are going to think and if they will be upset with you or even leave. Codependent. You experience extreme symptoms of anxiety or depression at the thought of having a parent or a family member mad at you. If that's you, take a mental note. Take a mental note. Number 7, the family feels the need to fix or control one member's behavior, such as mental illness or addiction, so much that it becomes consuming. An example of this is when the entire family's day is spent making sure that grandpa's needs are met so he does not drink. Number 8, there are constant feelings of worry about abandonment and rejection that infiltrate you every day. And the last 2, there has been any kind of abuse in the family, physical, emotional, yet you are still pressured to support. Oh my goodness. You are still pressured to support the one who harmed you. Read that again and slower. There has been abuse in the family, physical, emotional, yet you still are pressured to support the one who harmed you. This can be external pressure from family or even internal, such as guilt. And number 10, there is a feeling of walking on eggshells around someone in the family, especially when they are upset. So really quickly, just want to get one or two of your thoughts as I was reading the 10 examples of how this might show up in your family. Anything kind of hit home for you? Anything where you were just like, okay, I experienced that. Feel free to share, and then we'll close out after that. Kim K, what you got?
Ooh, child. Oh man. That last one hit me. I ain't gonna lie. It did. It really did. I ain't gonna put all my dirty laundry out there, but I struggle with that last one on having to take care of somebody that probably wasn't the best individual in my life growing up. And you know, I oftentimes get the response of, I understand it's, it sucks, but they are your blank insert relationship. Like they are your brother, they are your father, they are your sister. And it's just like, okay, if anything, what probably gets me going still is two things. It's one, while look, it doesn't, I ain't gonna lie, and God know my heart, it does not take away the feeling that I have still towards the situation. But it helps me to get continue going through it until the Lord decides to give a final answer. And those two things are, one, giving grace. While yes, we all play a role in the actions that we do. I think about, my own self, and yes, what I have done in my past might not be comparable to what this individual has done through my eyes, obviously. I still have to accept that known fact, like, I'm not perfect, they're not perfect. A lot of times the downfalls that people have in life are attributed from how they were grown up and the things that they were exposed to. So I oftentimes have to tell myself, in all caps lock, give grace. And the second thing that really gets me going is there I have some people that feel differently about it. You can give your opinion as well. Always open to it. It's a lot of times God asks us to do certain things. And sometimes we do it because it's asked of us, not because we necessarily have buy-in to doing this thing and believe that we have to do this thing, but because God requires me to do this thing is the only reason why I still do it, as opposed to, yes, he requires me to do this thing, and I understand why he requires me to do it. I have a heart change, and my heart posture is so in line with this thing. It's like, no, he just asks me to be a good person. And to be honest, if I'm trying to get to heaven, I'm going to just have to do what he says, So continue to be good to the individual because God requires me to do these things. And I've had folks that, have given their opinions on that. Like, if your heart is not in it, then you might as well just not do it. I feel like it can sway left and right on any given day. But yeah, back to the initial point, that last one about taking care of individuals that have not been the best role model, definitely hit home.
And you were the only one that could do it to help? You were the only one that could help?
That's a trick question. While other people feel the same way I feel towards him, they have decided to turn a blind eye. And going back to that last point I said about I want to go to heaven, it's not, I don't, it's hard to do that. Not so much out of like love and care and how I feel towards a person, but just like beyond this, again, it is a requirement that the Lord has of us to take care of people that can't take care of themselves, and my ultimate goal at the end of the day. So there are others, other family members, other siblings, but they choose to do with that as they see fit. That's between them and God. But yeah, that's that.
Yeah, the reason why I asked is because your situation, I don't know the details of your situation, but it reminds me of my father and his situation, because he died earlier this year, right? And I met him at what, 29? Met him at 29. He had cancer, didn't have government assistance, any of that. Wasn't in my life. And I got him help for government assistance. So I got him in touch with networking with things, with people and everything like that. But there were certain things that I had to sit with a counselor about. And the counselor simply said to me, I need you to write down what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do.
Yeah. No, yeah. I've definitely been having that conversation with myself.
Yeah.
Because what I would say is I'm not going to stop my life or put it in a terrible position for it. So, I try to have that boundary and hold that boundary. It's, if anything, that boundary gets pushed when I want to progress, essentially, especially when it requires something financial. And it's like, this $1,000, what is it going towards this month? Is it going towards this rent, or can I finally get a car? You know, like stuff like that. And
Mm.
then you start to have those conversations of, is this a requirement? Is it a luxury? Then you start questioning your choices and stuff like that. Like, well, and then you weigh this choice over that choice, and it's just like, then it comes back to that Christianity thing again. So it's a tug of war.
Yeah, I just feel like like a car, you deserve to have something to drive around in. You know what I'm saying? Some of the things that you're struggling with, and I know it's not easy to struggle with, but you have to live as well. Your life can't stop. And that made and some of the hardest decisions, and right, it can't be me telling you or somebody else telling you, but some of the hardest decisions is realizing that, hey, my heart will be like, I had to make a decision that the things that I was going to say yes to with helping, I would be okay with my heart accepting that. But I was not going to help with everything. Like you, and there's no hard feelings. You weren't in my life, right? Me getting you the resources is one thing, but me doing a lot of things, like there were many times he asked me for money and stuff like that, and it was a no. It was definitely a no, but that was only for me, right? And a part of it was he was a drinker and he would waste money as well. So even giving him that money
Yeah, it
would
was like
not be,
enabling it.
yeah, right. And that's my situation. But I'm just asking you to give yourself grace. And I think what I'm hearing from you is it's not you being selfish. If anything, sometimes you might be giving a little bit too much. And I just want you to care for yourself too. That like that's Christianity as well. Caring for yourself as well, not just for other people. Doesn't mean you have to be sacrificed. Like you have to be always the one sacrificing. There's just some regular consequences that people go through that one in our lives. And I can't bear all those consequences for you. Those are some things you have to go through,
It's
so,
true.
but if you ever want to talk about it off, just let me know. Just let
Hmm.
me know. But thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. All right. So it's 8:54, guys. It's 8:54, and I just want not gonna share the presentation, but just gonna share just a couple of bullet points when we talk about codependency, and not an easy topic at all, right? Because the reality is that a lot of people said, I feel attacked, right? But if anything, I wanted this service to be, I feel seen. I feel seen. Because many times, and right, these relationships, codependent relationships, they're two-sided. People can't take what you don't offer, right? People don't take what you don't freely offer. And so I want us to say, you know what? This service, I felt seen. I might not feel seen in those relationships, but we had an opportunity to have this conversation, and I feel motivated to start finding out what I actually need and what I actually want and so on. And so a couple of tips, what to do if you are in a codependent relationship. Number one, take the focus off the other person and focus on yourself. Do your own work. Do your own work. Along with that, practice compassionate self-care. Practice compassionate self-care. We spoke about finding a counselor, right? Take time to discover your own truth. Take time to discover your own truth. You have the right to change your mind at any time. You have the right to change your mind at any time. I remember sitting down during counseling, and when my father was possibly dying, the counselor was like, "So I need you to write down what you're willing and what you're not willing to do. Because I don't want you doing something out of guilt just because you feel like you need to do it, for example." Right. So there were some hard things. It was like, even if there was a funeral, questions like, would I be willing to even pay towards a funeral? Those are some real questions. right? But in a codependent relationship, the main focus is you spend so much time worrying about others, doing the hard work and discovering things about yourself and your feelings. Let go of the notion of being a victim. Okay? Life is not just happening to us, we have choices. And so the way out is to recognize the choices that we really have. Number 8, you are free to leave if you wish. Affirm that you will survive if the relationship does not make it through the transition. Sometimes that means that the person will separate themselves from you because of your boundaries, right? But sometimes those things need to happen for change to be made. You have the right to set limits, which helps set boundaries. You have the right to say no. You have the right to say no. Once you have boundaries and a sense of self, you can have real intimacy. Once you have boundaries and a sense of self, you can have real intimacy. Share your process with those who will support you sensitively and guide you productively. Learn more about the values that you adopted in your family of origin. I like that one a lot. Learn more about the values that you adopt in your family of origin. Decide which ones serve you and which ones don't. Establish your current values and live by them. Establish your current values and live by them. And last one, commit yourself to being as responsible for yourself as you possibly can. I'm gonna read that again. Commit yourself to being as responsible for yourself as you possibly can. One more time. Commit yourself to being as responsible for yourself as you possibly can. And that is the end of our service for tonight. Okay. That's the end of our service for tonight. We're going to pray. Just some quick announcements. Monday coming, we're going to go back to book club. We're on break because of a holiday this past week, Indigenous Peoples Day, right? And so we will be continuing the Awe of God. So join me, Cherie, the rest of the crew, as we continue Monday, 7 p.m. Also, we're going to be continuing the book of Revelation. Book of Revelation. We're having a great time and really bringing back Jesus at the center, right? Sometimes it's about the gloom and everything like that, but it's really the reality of the gospel. It's Jesus being with us. And so we're going to be talking about Tuesday, continue on chapter 3 of the book of Revelation. You'll see Chanel and I and the rest of the crew as well. And that is all the announcements that we have for today. Let's pray, close out. I'm going to leave you guys for Afterglow because I have to run to a service. But with that, yeah, let's pray. Dear Father God, we thank you so much for the ability to continue to grow. God, codependency is a very common thing. It can happen to any one of us. It's probably still happening to us even now, God. But the main thing is that it's nothing to be ashamed about, but it's something to say, now that I know, now that I can identify it, which is half the battle, what am I going to do about it? Help us to understand it's important to receive validation, but we have to have that validation for ourselves and that love and care and that kindness. Even if we hear it, it won't mean anything until we actually believe it for ourselves. God, be with the giver and the taker in these relationships, that it's all coming from a brokenness that happened so long ago. And so we are looking to heal and grow and get better. We praise your name, God, for what you're doing. We thank you so much. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right. Ruthie, go ahead. And I need somebody to be the co-host for Afterglow. So feel free. Let me know in the chat if you can.
That list of things to do that you mentioned.
Do you need it?
Yes, please.
Okay, let me screenshot that for you.
I don't know how to.
Oh no, I'll text it to you. Don't worry.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Don't worry, I got you, Ruthie. I got you. I'll make it simple. All right. Boom. Boom. Yep. Joab, Natalie. All right. So let's start Afterglow right now. Let's start Afterglow right now. Feel free. Tell us how your week is going and everything. Yeah, we do need to beat some Google Drive. That's a good point.
You don't have a Google Drive yet? Oh my goodness.
Well, I have my Google Drive, but I do have a BTM Google Drive. It's just share with me. So yeah.
The Devonte Gilchrist.
Yeah. I'm done. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah.
do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. You funny. You're real funny. Oh my gosh. All right. So yeah, let us know how you guys are doing. Let me go off camera right now. Oh, yeah, stop recording. Thank you so much. Forgot that.